This is the Broodcast on Poets at War, Inkling-style Discord chat, last Friday of every month. And now, the Broodcast.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Because, like, the first wave of Impressionism is just magnificent. Van Gogh, Monet, all of the Degas, all of the first wave Impressionists are just marvelous. So good. And then Impressionism just takes a 90-degree nosedive as you get into the significantly weirder stuff.
Right. And someone pops in.
Hey, it is the Wilsons.
Hey, how y'all doing?
I'm all right.
Good. Good to hear from you. What's going on?
How the bloody hell do I get in here? I had every time I use Discord, I have to relearn how to use it.
Well, in all fairness, everybody is relearning how to use Discord right now because of the big mobile update. So, you're in good company.
Oh, I thought I was just a numpty. Okay.
Well, is the desktop version, is it the desktop version for Chrome OS or is it the mobile version?
I'm assuming it's the desktop version because nothing's changed.
Okay, then it's probably the desktop version. On phones and tablets and stuff, it's changed a lot, but I actually like it a lot.
Yeah.
But, hello.
I do too.
How we doing, Sarah?
Good. How about you?
Hello.
Good.
Hey,
Good to see you.
The bookshelf.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got an octopus on it.
Nice.
Awesome.
I got that for Christmas. He was sticking out of my stocking Christmas morning.
Yay. That's fun. Did you see my hat?
Nice.
Yep. Michael Bush got it for me. It's amazing. Leather.
Fun.
Super nice.
I have hats up there too.
I gotta be honest, Joshua, maybe a little brutally honest. That is way better than your other hat.
Oh, I know it is. This is one of the nicest things I've ever owned for myself, honestly.
Yeah, that is fancy. Is that a real alligator?
It is cow leather that is depressed to look like croc leather. So maybe even better,
that's
honestly.
Kind of disappointing.
Well, yes and no, but it's the croc leather look, but I wanted it because it's like the Bard slayed a dragon and made a hat.
Wow.
That was the idea.
That is 100% you.
Yes.
Chris, show me what you're doing.
What you got going?
Show and tell. Show the class.
Okay, this is gonna be freaky, people.
No, it's not. Compared to some of the stuff we've seen on here, no, it's not. Trust me.
Okay, this poor Ariel doll had half her hair chopped off, so I'm replacing it.
Oh, that's fun.
There you go.
Bring it to the camera so they can see. Look.
Undoing the dark works of Sid and his minions, I see.
Yes.
Well, she's basically the anti-Sid.
Yep. I've known this about her for a while.
It's the opposite of Sid. Although, I don't know. Yeah, there's some people on Twitter that were arguing about Sid.
I know. I hate that.
What? Is Sid the new Gaston?
Yes.
Sid is the new Gaston.
You're kidding me.
No.
Why and what sphere is arguing this?
The hot takes for the sake of hot takes groups.
The ultra right wing hot takes, they're basically saying, Sid was just playing with inanimate objects, and now he has a good job in supporting his family, and Andy is just
he's just acting out his masculine impulses to explode things.
And I mean, I can respect that to a degree.
But also,
the internet
evil.
Was a bad idea.
Has a skull on his shirt for a reason. He enjoys death and glories in it in a way that is not nice to anyone. He steals his sister's toys and destroys them.
That's kind of sick.
Does private property mean nothing to you, right-wingers?
Yes. These people that are like the ultimate... Some of them are just joking. It's like, lulz, yeah.
Hot takes
Sid
for the sake of hot takes, yeah.
Of course not. Mm-hmm. But some of them are actually serious, and those people kind of scare me.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, Doug Wilson has been warning about the the angry red pill people being very bad for the last, year and a half or so?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even Doug Wilson's biggest fan, but yeah, he's dead right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. and he saw it coming before he saw it coming whenever the Gaston is the good guy thing started happening, which was before anybody else was talking about this.
Yep.
So.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Alex, when do you need to kick tonight?
I promise it's not. I was gonna say, I promise it's not that I don't like you guys, but I do have a party that I have to go to.
Yep.
I'll stay on mute and listen in on conversation. So.
Sounds good. All right, man.
Talk to y'all later.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Oh.
So, yeah. We'll see how many people we have and how long we actually go. I know everyone's kind of doing stuff. My birthday's tomorrow, so that's fun. Yay.
It's almost birthday.
Mm-hmm. Do what?
It's,
Yikes.
It's technically still Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Will be for quite some time.
Yep.
Yeah. I went to volunteer at the food pantry the other day. And not that I'm tooting my own horn or anything. Oh, look at how righteous I am.
Everybody knows that you wouldn't do that. This is just a wealth of funny anecdotes.
Yeah, it's that's part of the reason that I wanted to work at the food pantry was so that I would have funny anecdotes. Which it's kind of self-serving, but what can you do? Anyway, so nobody showed up. We had one guy show up first thing and wanted food. He was so nice, like incredibly nice. And then I talked with this the older lady who was assisting for like 2 hours. We had a 2-hour long conversation about pretty much everything. Every topic that I could think of. And then we had a bunch of people come in, and just as we were just at the changing of the guard, and this elderly couple came in, and the older man he was jolly and overweight, and he had a big like gray beard, and he said, "Merry Christmas! Mm-hmm. It's still Christmas."
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful.
We've got until Epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Merry Christmas to you," and off I went.
There you go. That's fun. I like that.
Yeah, I like it. I like it when the people that come in to volunteer are like jolly, because a lot of times they come in to volunteer out of like obligation,
right?
Sort of a servile thing. Like I have to do this because of whatever reason, or
I have to eat like my vegetables because people are starving in Africa.
Yeah, it's like they haven't smiled since 1994, and it's,
yeah,
and some of the people that I volunteer with are a bit on the liberal side, we'll say.
Yeah, that tends to happen.
At least they're happy,
right?
At least they're happy. They're not like angry. I think if you're going to volunteer to do something for God, you should be joyful about it.
For sure.
You should have a good attitude.
My mom would make us sing a song every time we complained growing up.
What song?
You told me about this. Yes.
I I don't remember who did it. It might be a Judy Rogers song. It might be an Integrity song. It's do everything without complaining. Do everything without arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure children of God. So yeah, the
who
verse.
was it? That was Steve Green.
Steve Green. That's who it is. Yes. Mm-hmm.
We had that cassette tape.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's one we did not have.
Yep. You had Salty though,
Otherwise,
right?
my mother would probably have done the same thing that your mother did.
Were you a were you a salty person, donut man? Who'd you have?
We had Veggie Tales. We had the Salty Bible.
Okay, yeah.
But I didn't know that there was more than just the Bible until I was a grown up and babysitting kids that had the CDs. Mm-hmm. Or actually, they didn't have the CDs. They had the 8-track or something.
I had like one of those. Nice. I had Salty. I had one Salty cassette, but most of my stuff was Donut Man. That's what I grew up with. Mm-hmm. The Donut Man was fun.
We got a smidge of Donut Man, but I think that must have been at somebody else's house because I don't think we had that.
I actually find it amazing because the Donut Man is he actually converted to Catholicism.
He did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Salty
from Charismatic
was written by Presbyterians.
Yes, he was. And they were your Mr. Rogers type Presbyterians mostly. which is like the conservative PCUSA wing that was still around at the time. So
not necessarily bad, but not great.
Right.
Either.
Yeah, exactly.
Our Christian radio station actually stopped playing the Donut Man when he converted to Catholicism.
Which I thought was kind of petty.
Shame.
That's messed up, man.
I remember when it happened. I was like, I haven't heard Donut Man in forever. Why haven't they played the Donut Man? It's not that I was a great Donut Man fan, but I was just like, I kind of missed that guy. He had good energy. And then we found out, and I was like, well, that's petty.
Yeah, no kidding. There's an album that legitimately, I'm pulling up the track listing here. It had a huge impact on me growing up, and putting my imagination onto thinking more militantly about my faith, even as just a little kid. It's the God's Army album, which they never did a video for, but they always had here we go. Okay, yeah, we got a track listing here on Amazon. Pulling it up. Taking a minute. All right. Yeah, so God's got an army, great and mighty army in the earth today, dressed in splendid armor, there in full array. You guys remember that one? Then it did OBEY, Obey Your Mom and Dad. Let God, one of my favorites, which is part of a psalm, let God arise, let his enemies be scattered. I really like that one. And having that, let God arise and his enemies be scattered, like on a lot of this stuff on a kid's album was like crazy. You know what I mean? Like you don't get that anymore.
Yeah.
Then they had
no, you don't.
What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. And then my favorite, which to this day still, like, it still hits me, like, in really strong ways. It's 2 said go. 10 said no. There are giants in the land. 2 said go. Because you got to remember Joshua, and then my brother's name is Jonathan Caleb. Joshua, David, Jonathan, Caleb, right? So like that was a big thing for us because we knew like this is what we're supposed to live up to. That's what our parents told us. And then I'm in the Lord's army, yes sir, all that good stuff.
Yes sir.
Mm-hmm. Then they had a James 4:7 thing that they did, which really wasn't it was more of a memory thing. It wasn't so much a song. Then they had the Unclean Spirit song, which was the devil walked in, dirty old stinky old devil was he? Remember that one? It's the do you remember that? Yeah,
I heard that one.
We didn't play that much on the radio. station.
Yeah, that one was funny. He basically like took the man leaves the parable about the house that they chased the devil out, but then he came back with more friends. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And so they took that and then they made it like funny, but like not in an irreverent way. Like the devil's still evil and whatever. You want to say goodnight?
No, Daddy.
Yes. You want to say hi?
Hi, Hazel.
They're saying hi. Say hi real quick.
Hi, Hazel.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
What's up?
Dad,
Yes. What do you need to tell me?
I kind of.
1 second.
I want my phone so I can listen to The Hobbit.
Okay, go grab it right there. She got the recordings that I did of our reading of The Hobbit on her phone with a little like shortcut to get to them as one of her Christmas presents. So she was getting it to listen to it.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Yep, and then
We had
yeah, go ahead.
we had some cassette tapes as kids, and I haven't seen them as adults, so I don't know what where they came from, or brand or singers or anything. But we had some that we would sing along with in the car, that were Christian songs. You had Bringing in the Sheaves.
Yep.
Bringing in the Sheaves. No idea at the time what the heck sheaves were, or if it was supposed to be sheep and I was hearing it wrong. Like, what is going on?
Oh boy.
That was one that I never understood as a child. And now as an adult, every so often, my brain DJ is like, "Oh, we should sing this song." And I'm like, I don't know why, but at least I understand it now.
Yep. I had a really weird deja vu father-son moment the other day where Peter was dressed for church and Casey said to him, looking sharp, and he goes, "Shark? I'm not a shark." I said the exact same thing to my father, and that's when I learned what the word sharp means. When I was like 4 or 5 years old, he did it too. The exact same thing. So that was an interesting little moment. One of those weird little core memories,
Are we gonna wait for other people to show up, or shall we get started?
We can get started.
Something.
Yeah, if you want to start, that's fine. By all means. Does TK have something too?
Right. I am assuming she does. I mean, she said she was going to show off her head, but
okay. Sarah, you got something too? Just so I know.
Yeah, I wanted to read my 5th chapter of my Eowyn story.
Fantastic.
And I would prefer to do it sooner than later.
Right.
Just because I'm going to have to hop off at some point. And I don't quite know when that point is.
Okay. Yeah.
I might be able to stick around for an hour. I might be down to 15 minutes. I don't know right now.
Okay. Well, if TK's fine with it, then you can go after Ian. So we can start rolling on that.
I was just going to let her go first because I don't know how long mine's going to take.
Okay. That's fine with me.
Okay. Yeah, we're low on people tonight, huh?
Yeah, but it's all good.
Yeah.
I knew we would be.
Yeah. So we're up to chapter 5. I had to look it up because I wasn't sure. It's been so long. So we're up to chapter 5. So Eowyn has fallen in love with Aldor, and yeah, they kind of had a nice moment at the end of the last chapter. So, chapter 5 of Eowyn, White Lady of Rohan. By winter solstice, Eowyn and Aldor were formally betrothed, and Grima troubled Eowyn no longer, as Aldor had threatened him, saying, "If I hear that you have been near my betrothed, you shall be made to accept my challenge, as is customary and rightful, and that duel will be short indeed." Eowyn was deliriously happy and nearly fearless without Grima haunting her steps. Caught up in planning her trousseau and wedding, she did not notice that her brother and cousin were also happier without her unconscious seriousness and fear hanging over them. They had still not found a way to wrest control of the king and country from Grima, but with Eowyn's good fortune and Aldor's warning, the atmosphere was lighter. Even the king felt it, and he revived somewhat. All was ready for a spring wedding. The wild men of Dunland had been encroaching on Rohirric land again, and Éomer and Theodred were each obliged to take action on more than one occasion. Éowyn made a habit of watching from the top of the long stair for the return of the Eorids, and running down to reunite with Aldor when they returned, unconcerned with the whispers of imprudence and anxiety. Though spring was not yet come, the wild men were undeterred by the small amount of snow remaining in the hills. Theodred's Eorid pushed them out again, but the wild men continued encroaching on Rohirric lands. Éowyn watched as both Eorids rode off to fight together, and continued to watch as often as she could until she saw the dust kicked up by the returning horses. She ran down to the spot near the great stables where she always met Aldor, Éomer, and Theodred. Men and horses milled around as they waited their turns to enter the stable. Éowyn watched and waited patiently. The activity around her slowed, then stopped, continuing in the stables out of sight. Still she waited, watching the horizon. Finally, she was rewarded by dust rising up, and turned into 3 horses and 2 riders. Éowyn was gripped by fear. Still she waited. There was nothing else to do. The minutes passed by slowly as she watched the small group come closer, straining to discover who was missing. Finally, they were close enough to be recognized. Theodred was leading Wynfola, with Éomer beside him. No, No, Éowyn breathed. No, not my Aldor, not my Aldor. Her mind was numb, and she was unaware of having spoken, and unaware, too, of the tears streaming down her cheeks. She stood immobile until her brother and cousin were nearly upon her. They stopped and dismounted in front of her. It is with deep regret, Theodred began formally, his voice husky, that I must inform thee that thy betrothed, Aldor, has fallen. He fought bravely, defending a brother in arms. He held out the reins of Aldor's horse to her. He died with honor. Éowyn took the reins, wrapping them around both hands, using them to anchor her to reality. She nodded in answer, unable to speak. More words were said, but she didn't hear them. She barely felt it when Éomer squeezed her shoulder in solidarity. Somehow she found herself walking Wynfola into his stall and removing the saddle and bridle. There was less noise than normal, perhaps because many riders and their families had already finished and left, or perhaps because Éowyn's wet, stony face dissuaded talk. But she was oblivious to everything except the constant thought that Aldor should be here, that she should only be helping him as she had done many times before. Brushing the horse was repetitive and soothing. He nuzzled her for treats, and she gave him some automatically, having brought some for that purpose. She brushed him thoroughly and for far longer than necessary, but Wynfola did not mind, and Éowyn did not know what else to do. Finally, she realized how much time had passed, and she moved on to the saddle. She cleaned it meticulously, and followed it up by giving the bridle the same treatment. Suddenly, Éowyn realized that she was crying. Perhaps she had been crying the whole time. She did not know. Wynfola bumped her gently from behind, and she turned back to him, rubbing his big nose. We'll get through this somehow, Wynfola, she whispered to him, barely able to make the sound come out around the lump in her throat. She gave the big horse a long hug, then left him and went to her rooms. Realizing suddenly that Aldor would never share them with her as planned, she collapsed on her bed and sobbed until she fell asleep. Somehow she made it through the next day, and the day after. She refused to speak to anyone, even her best friend, Maeve the blacksmith. The week dragged by, then the month. She began speaking again, though only as necessary. The ache never went away. The wound was too wide, too deep. But she learned how to control her tears while others were around. Many a time Éowyn played with her dagger, Aldor's dagger, the first of many presents he had given her, considering joining her love in the afterlife. but the thought of what her death would do to her brother and cousin always stayed her hand. She rode Windfall each morning now, and her own mare in the afternoons. She attended her uncle, but spoke even less than before. Slowly, 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 a year passed, then another. The pain never left, but it became so normal, anyone noticed it less and less often, though she still thought of Aldor every day. Grima Wormtongue began shadowing her again. She barely cared, barely noticed, as a shadow began creeping over her heart. Another year passed, and Eowyn began trying to avoid the whisperings of the snake-like advisor, to little avail. Theodred, Amer, Elfham, and Hama had tried everything they could think of to remove him from the throne room, also without success. The king sunk deeper into the oblivion the cousins were now sure was caused, somehow, by his devious advisor. And that is the end of Chapter 5.
Well done.
It's also the end of Part 1.
So how many parts?
3 parts. 1 for Aldor, 1 for Aragorn, and 1 for Faramir.
Gotcha. Okay, I like that. Yeah. So, good stuff. Good backstory. I really enjoyed that. It's shorter than some of the others. Did you kind of just reach the end and... How did that all go? Was it supposed to be short? Was it supposed to feel... What are your... Why was it short?
It was short because that part of her life was over.
Right.
Yeah, that's... My chapters aren't, ever a specific length. It's just how it feels.
Yeah. That makes sense. No, you connected the dots, did a wonderful job. Anyone else have thoughts? Hey, Zach, good to have you here. I know you're mainly just listening, but based on what you said in Tap Room, maybe he said something else. I'll see if he did, but anyway. He said, great story, Sarah. So.
Thank you.
I'll keep that up on my phone so I can look at it if he says anything else, but yeah, Ian, do you have anything? You're muted. Yep.
Oh. Okay, no wonder you weren't hearing me. Yeah, it's very good. I enjoyed it. You definitely got the dialogue especially was the fact that you were able to use that early modern English correctly was impressive. Well, not many people can do that, and I still can't, but by God's grace and yours, perhaps one day I will. And maybe then Amy will shut up. What?
She just wants your writing to be perfect.
Yeah.
Well, too bad. What?
That was just a little blunt, that's all.
I am the blunt instrument, all right?
He is.
So, for those of you who don't know me, Amy is one of the people that beta read my novellas, helped me write them, and she was constantly complaining about my use of the fact that I would switch back and forth between early modern English and modern English, especially with the dialogue of my characters, but I picked that up from Edgar Rice Burroughs and Robert E. Howard, and I just went with it, and I'm not trying to be Shakespeare, I'm not trying to be Tolkien, I'm just trying to write books that people want to read.
And now I get a chance to throw a little bit of shade at Peter Jackson just for fun. Let's hunt some orc. Anyway, that line feels so out of place. I'm sure it's a similar thing to some people, but it's even worse when it's actually modern English. In fact, within the past 2 decades of that movie coming out, that kind of language came about. Let's do this, as an exclamatory phrase. Anyway.
Yeah. So, and I understand her criticism, but I also think that I eventually acquiesced to her, and I am kind of regretting that, to be honest. And Amy, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, but I don't share your opinion.
For the record, I usually agree with Amy.
Okay.
Oh, you're both wrong.
I say
Chris,
it depends.
I know
but
you're embarrassed, but Sarah knows that I'm joking, and Joshua knows that I'm joking, and if our listening audience doesn't know that I'm joking, well, I'm joking.
Well done.
I know exactly how much you're joking and how much you're not joking, so we're good here.
Exactly.
That's why I laugh.
I didn't mean to make this all about me.
Oh,
I liked it. I liked it very much. Especially the internal struggle that Eowyn had. I feel like I've read this before. Maybe you showed it to me before and I read it.
I definitely showed it to you before, but I got to admit, I would be surprised if you had gotten to chapter 5 because
I'm pretty sure I've read this part. I'm pretty sure I've read this part before. I remember. I remember reading about Eowyn contemplating suicide, and I thought that was very poignant.
I mean, I'm probably not the only one who's brought it up, but yeah, I definitely sent this out when I finished it, so.
Yeah. Okay.
Very nice.
Chris, did you have any thoughts?
That was right. We were on mute and they couldn't hear me. Your style is excellent. It will be a credit to the Tolkien fanfiction collective when it's done and ready to go.
Oh, it is done, I think.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, the read-through is giving me a chance to notice any mistakes that I haven't noticed in all of the times I've reread it. But yeah. it is complete. To the best of my ability, it is grammatically correct.
I haven't noticed anything.
And Amy's gone over it with a fine-tooth comb. So I think it's probably pretty good.
Else?
Does she have thicker combs?
No.
Oh boy.
It would be quite interesting if we could find a way to coax her onto this podcast one of these times.
That would be fascinating, but also extremely frustrating.
I'm down. I am down. I really love seeing people who are very meticulous prose editors encounter my poetry. It's like they hit a brick wall.
That was making a weird glare. It was distracting me.
Sarah's like, yes, yeah. Exactly.
I will freely admit, I don't usually have any idea what the heck to do with your poetry.
Very few people do. Oh boy.
My ability to edit poetry comes down to you can't rhyme the word with the same word.
Generally speaking, I agree, unless you are doing something like rhyming the word two with the word two, TWO. But I would do TWO twice as a repetition, specifically because there's two of them. So there's things that you can do with that too. You know, so poetry is all about making up your own rules. Not having rules. Some people think that. It's not. It's make up your own rules and stick to them. That's basically what it is. When you set your meter, when you're doing this, when you're doing that, you're making up your own rules and sticking to them. Now, you might be making up rules that have already been made up before, or stealing someone else's rules. But yeah, that's anyway.
I mean, at least you write your poetry and you have rules. My poetry, there's a reason why most of it doesn't get seen. It can be pretty awful.
Well, I'd love to hear sometime, and I'm not just saying that. I love hearing what you write, period, because you're a talented writer. So,
thank you.
And maybe I like you helping me with some of my, what do you call it? esotericness that can come in with poetry sometimes. Maybe I could help you out with making your stuff a little bit clearer as far as the poetry goes. Let me know.
Well, my problems are either it's too cliche,
Yep,
or it's too. It's got the cadence of Dr. Seuss.
that's
when
okay
it
too.
shouldn't.
When it shouldn't. Okay, gotcha. There you go.
Well, I mean, it's one thing if you have a Dr. Seussian cadence when you're doing something fun.
Right.
But if you're, I'm thinking about some poems that I wrote years ago when I had a breakup, and some of those poems were in Dr. Seuss cadence, and it just didn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember reading some of those.
Yep. You were one of the people subjected to that horror.
Well, I mean, I said, "Oh, that's beautiful, Sarah," and thinking internally, "What the hell am I supposed to do with this?"
Oh
Fair.
boy. Oh,
I mean,
boy.
I probably shouldn't have lied to you that it was beautiful, but
Hey, at least you're coming clean. Like Hillary Duff
I
back
mean-
in what,
well,
2004?
well, I mean, the feelings that you were I was trying to be sympathetic, and help you get through that mirror of a thing. But yeah, some of it was not that great. I'm sorry to say.
I'm well aware, believe me. And you didn't even see the worst stuff.
Oh boy.
Well, that could be fun if you're not attached to them anymore as well for Broodcast one day. Just saying. Any which way. Ian, did you want to be next? Do you want TK? Do you want to be next? What do we want to do? I can go if people want some poems in between, some short stuff. I'd like to do 2 tonight. They're not too long, but I got 2 different villain one-shot kind of deals from Guardians of Atlanta, which, by the way, I did finish posting Guardians of Atlanta. The entire thing is readable on my website, and it's fun and awesome. And Alex got to read through the whole thing and really enjoyed it.
It's complete now?
Season 1 is complete.
And
yeah, I only have it's 112 poems. And it's a full beginning to end story, and everything. And the season 2 is going to be different, completely different art kind of thing, but that's eventual. I'm working on other stuff right now, but yeah, season 1 is complete. So, and you can, for anyone who cares, who's listening, joshuadavidling.com/GOA1. All of the chapters can be reached, by typing in /GOA and then the number, if you really want to do it that way. It just makes it easy when you're navigating. But there's easy navigation on the website too to find it. So,
and that's the one we've been posting on Logo Sophia, right?
We're going to be posting. Yes, I still haven't gotten everything together because you wanted to post it in episodes, and I was trying to get all the episodes intact to be, happy edited for your sake, and that's something I need to get back to. So, but we are going to post it
you're already
Sophia.
Yeah, I was only going to end up posting like 1 a month or something until you kind of got more under your feet or whatever.
Yeah, I'm going to get them all drafted for you.
Yeah. So we started that. I think we posted the first 1 or 2.
Really?
And then I kind of got focused on Christmas and all the stuff that's been posted since it's Christmassy.
We'll get back to it. Anyway, so what do we want to do next?
You can go, Ian.
Okay, I go.
Go for it.
She's still working on her head. Okay, so I've got.
I want to see the progress.
I'm not going to start out all over from the beginning with my story Bad Attitude, because I'm doing the rewrites right now, but the beginning part hasn't really changed much other than it's narrated from the first person now.
Can you give a summary of what's happened so far? Because I don't think you told me about this one.
Oh, okay. So, first part of the story, this is a flashback to when Walter is in high school, and
Sorry,
this
you
kid
haven't told me
is
too much.
this kid has been creeping on his girlfriend, so Walter shoved him in a locker and then got in trouble for it. And then he goes home. He gets suspended from school. He goes home. He punches the punching bag for a while. He talks with his girlfriend. Um, some weird stuff happens with the radio that he's listening to. He gets this. His friend Steve is beginning this weird signal every week or so that doesn't really. It's not on any frequency that's normally used by radio broadcasters or cell phones or anything, and they don't really have an explanation for it. So they're trying to get to the bottom of it. And in the rewrite, I had Walter make a date with his girlfriend to go and see her at her house, and this is where we find Walter. The May evening air was warm and humid as I arrived at the Farrell's house. Stepping up the front steps, I should probably be using my Walter voice. Stepping up the front steps, I pressed the bell and waited while Mrs. Farrell came to the door. "Good evening, Walter," she said as she opened the door. "Nice to see you tonight. Judy's out back." She was a medium height, medium build woman with obviously bleached blonde hair in her early 40s. She liked me. Her husband hated my guts. She claimed that she would eventually bring him around. I doubted that. She invited me into the house and offered me some sweet tea, which I accepted. As we passed by the family room, I took note of her husband, Bart, sitting down with none other than Darla Connolly. Bart was kind of a big wheel in the community, very politically connected. It was not unusual for him to have some up-and-coming political figure in his home. The only surprising thing about it was that he had already expressed support for O'Donnell. O'Donnell is the other guy running for mayor. Connolly locked eyes on me. Something about her gaze made my skin crawl. Those unblinking retinas seemed to bore into my soul. Everything about her seemed hateful to me. After briefly waving at Mr. Farrell, I continued out the back door where I found Judy swimming in the well-lit in-ground pool. Judy was on our high school swim team, and damn good at it. I didn't know any better. If I didn't know any better, I'd say the girl was a mermaid. As she came to the end of her lap, she surfaced and said, "Hi, Walter." "Hey," I replied. "I didn't think to bring my trunks." She shrugged. "Daddy might object to you jumping in without him." She swam over to the ladder and climbed out of the water. I handed her a towel. Bush light from the pool glistened on her wet skin and hair. Her purple one piece clinging tightly to her toned figure. She was the picture of youth and beauty.
Good.
Draping the towel over herself, she sat down on the deck chair, inviting me to do the same in the adjacent chair. "What's new?" she asked. "That bathing suit for one," I replied coyly. Judy laughed. "Punch any nerds lately?" "Not today," I responded. I see your father has the up-and-comer over." "You know Daddy," said Judy. "Always got to be involved." "Last I'd heard, he had his full support behind O'Donnell," I said. "Since when do you give a crap?" asked Judy. "Curiosity," I responded. My keen ears picked up the faint rustling in a nearby juniper hedge that surrounded the property. I paused, listening. Someone else might have dismissed it as a raccoon or a possum, but it didn't sound like either of those to me. Being a werewolf has a few advantages. The thing sounded big and heavy, and definitely walked on two legs. "What is it?" asked Judy. "I heard something," I replied. Rising from the deck chair, I walked in the direction of the sound. "Walter, what are you doing?" But I didn't reply. I could make out the vague shape of a human-like figure skulking in the darkness. The wind shifted. I caught a whiff of the figure's all-too-familiar scent. Hot rage flooded my body. This was none other than Howard Sinowitz. Taking Sinowitz by the shirt collar, I dragged him, cursing and struggling, from the bushes. A rather expensive camera hung around his thick neck. I snapped the strap and tossed it away. I then began beating Sinowitz, punching him over and over. "Walter, stop!" screamed Judy, but the blood-mad rage had gripped me. None could stop me now. Sinowitz squirmed, squealing like the pig he was, but I held firm. Suddenly the lawn was flooded with light. "Stop right there!" barked a woman's voice. I paused in my beating, just long enough for Sinowitz to punch me in the face. The blow knocked me off him long enough for him to get away. I uttered a word which I'm not normally given to say out loud as I watched him escape. "Watch your language, Walter," barked the voice again. I looked toward the source of the voice. The bright flashlight dazzled my eyes, but I could make out the form of a short woman holding a rifle. As I raised my hands, she lowered the weapon and the flashlight. In the dim light from the Farrell's porch, I recognized the face of Maud O'Feeney, the town eccentric and former high school employee. At that point, Judy rushed through the hedgerow. "Walter, are you okay?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm good," I replied. "What were you doing on my lawn?" asked O'Feeney. "And who the Sam Hill were you beating on?" "Howard Sinowitz," I replied, wiping the blood from my lip. "He's been creeping on Judy for weeks. Second time I've had to teach him this lesson in etiquette." "Kids these days," growled O'Feeney. "They don't know manners no more." I bent down and picked up the camera and tossed it away. Wait a minute, I read that sentence wrong. I bent down, picked up the camera I had tossed away. It appeared to be intact. Switching it on, I looked through the camera roll. Disgust written all over my face. Sinowitz had hundreds of photos of Judy on there. I had half a mind to break the thing, but we needed it as evidence for the sheriff. Then something in the camera caught my attention. A photograph of what appeared to be several figures bearing torches and standing around some sort of altar. There were more. Several images of some kind of occult ritual being performed in the dead of night. "What is it, Walter?" asked Judy. "Creepy photos of you, mostly," I responded. "I'm going to hang on to it. We'll need it as evidence to get a restraining order." "Judy!" called Mrs. Farrell. "Judy!" moaned Mr. Farrell. "Judith Marie Farrell, where are you?" "You young'uns best be getting home," said O'Feeney. We burst through the hedge and ran back to the deck where the Farrells stood. Bart had his arms crossed over his chest, with a concerned look on his mug. Mrs. Farrell looked much more concerned or frightened. "What's all the ruckus?" asked Mr. Farrell. "We thought we heard screaming out here." Sinowitz was stalking me again. Oh, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. "Sinowitz was stalking me again," Judy responded. "Had a camera full of pictures of me." Her voice broke. Tears welled up in her beautiful eyes. I could have killed Sinowitz in that moment. Mrs. Farrell hugged her weeping daughter tightly. "At the camera?" asked Bart, gesturing to the object in my hand. I handed the camera off to him. "I'll make sure it gets to the sheriff," he said. Finally emerged from the house. I paused. Something inside told me I should not be anywhere near her. A visceral disgust filled me whenever I laid eyes on her. I couldn't name what it was or why. "Everything all right?" she said in that almost unnaturally smooth voice. "My daughter's being stalked by some kind of obsessed boy from school," said Bart. "Little creep was snapping pictures of Judy," I growled. "Oh, the poor dear," said Connolly, patting Judy on the shoulder. My skin crawled to think of her touching Judy. Again, I didn't understand why. She turned her snake-like gaze to me. To my recollection, I don't think I've ever seen her blink. "You should be more careful, Walter," she said. Another move like that could get you in trouble with the law. I shrugged. Won't be the last time. Somebody had to teach him a lesson, or he won't forget any time soon. Shortly after that, I said goodnight to Judy and went home, promising I called her the day afterward. Quiet as the grave. That's how I described the Crystal Creek neighborhood that night. It was an almost unnatural calm, occasionally interrupted by the baying of some distant hound dog. The dark itself seemed to be alive and restless. It had been just over a week since the last incident. Steve calculated that this would be the perfect time to catch the signal again. He sat on the lawn chair, staring at the monitors of his equipment. I stood a few feet away, holding a parabolic dish in my hand. Everything has a frequency, said Steve. The whole universe has a vibration, a song that it sings. It's all part of the grand symphony. That's honestly kind of beautiful, Steve, said Judy. He said some pretty weird crap, but it sounds pretty poetical, I remarked. You know, whispered Judy, I was hoping for something a bit more romantic than a fact-finding mission. Tomorrow, sweet cheeks, I replied. I was kind of hoping we wouldn't have a chaperone, continued Judy, gesturing to Steve, who sat nearby looking at his radio equipment. He's the guy with the equipment, I replied with a shrug. Judy rolled her eyes. Are you dating me just to get access to my backyard? I could say the same thing about you and my chopper, I quipped. You're going to take me for a ride in that thing tomorrow, you know, she said coyly. Hang on, said Steve. There it is. Some of the lights in the neighborhood flickered and went out. That happened a lot? I inquired. It's been happening a couple of times a week, replied Judy. Hold the dish, right there, ordered Steve. I froze in place. Every hair on my body stood on end. Something very strange was happening. I mentioned that the night was dark. All you could see were the stars twinkling overhead. I could vaguely make out something oval-shaped blocking out the stars. Wherever it was huge, and hovered in the direction of the anomalous signal. Reading is thirsty work. What's over there? I asked. That's where the Connollys live, replied Judy. I handed her the parabolic dish. What are you doing? She asked. I'm going to take a walkabout, I responded, traveling in the direction of the Connollys. Not without me, you're not, protested Judy, following behind. Dangerous, I responded. Look a little danger, she argued. That's why I'm with you. I couldn't argue with her when she was in this mood. I sighed and went on my way to the direction of Steve indicated, Judy in tow. We crept between the white picket fence and the juniper hedge toward the large ornate house. I froze. A light flickered from the basement windows, as though a flame burned within. I could just barely hear what sounded like chanting coming from that cellar. I paused. I don't fear much besides God and my father's wrath, but something about this situation scared me. But my determination to solve the mystery outweighed my fear. I motioned for Judy to stay back, not that she'd actually listen. Closer and closer I crept, the bizarre whispered chanting tickling my sensitive eardrums. Kneeling down, I peered into the basement window. What I saw chilled me to the bone. Hooded figures stood in a tight circle around a stone altar, holding candles and chanting in the bizarre, hissing, whispering tongue. On the altar lay the figure of a naked girl who appeared to be unconscious. One of the hooded figures stepped forward, holding a long knife in its strange claw-like hand. I looked on in mute horror as the creatures performed their grisly sacrifice. To describe in any detail what happened next would turn your stomach as well as mine. I suddenly heard the sound of Judy vomiting a few yards away. She'd had the misfortune of watching beside me. Rising up, I wrapped my arms around Judy as she wept from the horror of what we'd just witnessed. I practically had to carry her back to her own yard. What the hell happened? Asked Steve. You don't want to know, I responded. I laid Judy down on the lawn and sat in total silence. Who knows how long we sat there, contemplating the horror of what we'd just witnessed. Could have been hours. The massive disk that hovered over the Connollys' house had disappeared. The signal had ceased.
Very nice, sir. I have two main comments. One, you may want to add something in about I contemplated trying to stop it, but there were way too many, right? So he's not just looking on in mute horror, but like he has enough faculty to tell what's happening, but either some kind of unseen force is holding him back, or he contemplated stopping it and decided it was a fruitless effort, right? So, and then the other thing was, this is a compliment big time. The line specifically, "punch any nerds lately," really stood out to me in a wonderful way. And it's more than just a funny line. It shows, it's more than just a funny line. It shows that Walter is, by all metrics, your stereotypical high school bully. He just has an agenda. And that's actually amazing as a character. You know what I mean? I don't know if you ever thought of that, but like he has a chopper. I'm imagining either leather and or denim that he's wearing. Like all of it basically is a bully with an agenda, right? Like it's kind of amazing. I love that as a character. It is so anti-hero. It's absolutely bonkers. I love it. I love it, man.
That is hilarious. I mean, Walter is kind of a nerd.
Right, yeah, that's the thing. But like most bullies are, you know, they kind of have their own special interests that they kind of, you know, whatever. But because of his build, because of whatever, he's been cast as the stereotypical bully in his high school. Right?
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of an outcast.
Yeah, exactly.
The jocks don't really know what to do with him, and the nerds don't really know what to do with him, and nobody quite understands what he's about. There are a few people at this point that know that he's a werewolf,
right?
Are afraid to say anything.
Right, totally, yeah.
And so he most people just kind of avoid him or write him off, and that's why the story is titled "Bad Attitude."
Mm-hmm. I love it. Fantastic, man. Sarah, thoughts?
I'd like to piggyback on your first thought about he should be trying to come up with ways of doing something. And it could be Judy's throwing up that kind of steers him away. Like, oh yeah, I have to take care of Judy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely want to know what happens next. And I wrote down a couple random things. What time period? Like, what year is this taking place?
Okay, Walter would be 16 at this point. He's 30 right now, so that would be. Let's say I'll just say 15 years ago. So that would be
math.
Almost 20. Let's say it's almost.
How many authors does it take to do a simple math problem?
Well, it depends what year the rest of it's set in as well.
That'd be like 2010. No, the whole thing takes place in like 2010, 2011, something like that.
Okay. Because I wasn't sure how far back. Because I wasn't sure how far back it would be, I wasn't sure what kind of cameras they would have.
So like early 90s?
Yeah.
But
is that what we're looking at? Early 90s for this story?
2010, 2011.
Oh, this one is 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Then that's totally fine. Also, when she says, "Since when do you give a crap?" That was great. But his response didn't quite make sense to me. I think you said his response was curious. Something like that.
Curiosity.
Curiosity. I think you should change it to just curious. I feel like that would fit. That would answer her question better.
All right, that makes sense.
Good evening, Aaron. How are you doing?
Oh, how late am I? I know I'm earlier this time.
Yeah, you are earlier this time. You're not too late. If you have something to read, we can put you in here in a few.
Halfway through.
You want to say hi, Casey?
Am I?
No? Okay. She's just going around the corner, grabbing something from the closet. Anyway. Just creeping, she said.
Yeah.
Any which way.
Hi, Casey.
Hi, Casey.
Everyone said hi.
Hi. I have
She's
no
working on
camera.
my...
It's not PC.
I gotcha. Casey's working on my birthday pie, I think. Yes, I prefer birthday pie because I'm weird.
I'm still deciding.
You're
What
still
kind of pie?
deciding on
I'll probably
the
start it in the morning.
in the morning, probably. Okay, she's making a peach pie. Not by my request. Peach is my favorite, so
I've never had a peach pie.
it's like peach cobbler filling, but in a pie. It's so much better than cobbler.
I haven't had peach cobbler either.
Oh, you Yankee! Hold on.
I've had peach cobbler, and I'm as Yankee as they get.
I was gonna say, yeah, but you're more rural, aren't you? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Try a French thing called a galette.
You could fit 3 of Malone in the town where Sarah. I did the math.
Yeah.
Oh, hey!
Brendan, what's up, man?
You actually did the math out? Wow.
I'm sorry. His name just went out of my head, and all I could think of was Beardy.
Brendan is beardy. Okay,
Is that your gut reaction to every guy with a beard?
I'm beardier than Brendan.
I don't know. Sarah, this is who I am now.
Oh, I just think
My
it's
grandpa
hilarious.
calls everybody
because
money
that's what you-
bags, so.
I just think that's hilarious because that's what you called Jacob when we videoed with you that time.
I remember his name now.
Should hope so. He's been around long enough.
It takes me about 2 weeks to remember his name. So
You
Alrighty.
pitched out there. What?
I was
I said
just
it takes me about 2 weeks to remember anyone's name, unless
Dude,
it's something really unique.
I've been using Jacob's name for the last 5 months.
Yes. And I still forgot it. I don't know. I just Jacob is. It's just such a normal name. Like I expected him to be named Ignatius or something.
Ignatius. You should just rename everyone. Anyway,
Ignatius Thistlewhite was the name of the character in A Year Without a Santa Claus. We watched that one the other day. Is that you? You wouldn't have seen its claymation.
Aaron,
Oh,
did you have
yeah.
something to read tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Do we want to do Aaron's next? TK, I don't know how long y'all hanging around. If she has anything.
Yeah, we're gonna have to knock off soon. So, I'm gonna recommend that we read PK's next. Not that I'm being like
I would
I'm not
say
trying to
so.
hog the mic or anything.
Yeah. Okay.
But since we do have to leave soon.
So.
Who's Mike and why are you hogging him?
Could you do me a favor and grab me some water
Yes, I can.
while I explain what's going on? So, in the past month, with this
Do you want to?
with this novel I've been writing,
Real
I
quick,
have been
TK.
pretty
Casey
much-
wanted to say hi before she heads out.
Hello.
Hi, Casey.
Hey. How's it going?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good.
Good.
I don't know if Joshua tells you guys about how hilarious Peter's getting.
Every now and then. Go ahead,
He told us about the shark thing.
Yeah, shark instead of sharp.
Shark, yeah, What did he do today? Let's see. Oh, yeah, he woke up at like 7:30, totally alive and ready to go. He comes right to my face and says, "Mama, it's morning. I'm thirsty." And I'm like, okay, that's cool. And I just stay there. And he proceeds to bring me a giant bottle of water. Open this. I'm going to drink it. And I'm like, okay, man, here you go. And he drinks it and he says, "Here, I'm done." I'm like, okay, cool. And then what feels like maybe half an hour later, but I'm sure it was only just a few minutes, he comes with like the whole container of yogurt and says, "I need..."
Like one of the big ones like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I need to eat now. Can you open this?" And I'm like, let me, like, I guess I have to get up now and actually, like, do something about this, because you certainly can't eat 32 ounces of yogurt. But
No.
he also did, like, go out for lunch with me and my brother today, and then come home and proceed to eat a second lunch.
And not tell me that he ate lunch yet.
Because Joshua didn't know he had already eaten, so he just fed him. And I came home from visiting with our neighbor and was like, Did you try to feed Peter?" What do you mean? I fed Peter." "Oh. Okay, well, he had already eaten." "Oh, well, he ate again." And then tonight at dinner, he just, like, announced, "There's no more meat on my plate." And
This isn't a Brazilian restaurant, son.
Joshua was like, "Okay, well, eat the rest of your food then." And he's like, "But the rest of the food isn't meat."
Go, "This is just rice." Like, has some in his fingers.
Congratulations. You just got a taste of what it's like to be parents of a teenage boy.
Right, at 2 years old, yeah, pretty much.
But then it, like...
That sounds like...
Go ahead, Sarah.
That's a big attempt to be self-sufficient for such a little guy.
Yeah. And, like, Hazel's tastes, like, went so picky so quickly that I forgot that she used to be like that. Like, we used to call her the keto baby because she pretty much didn't want to eat anything but, like, things that came from animals. She's the kid who cried about a birthday cake when she was, like, 2.
It's not meat.
She was like, no, I don't really, I'm not down for this. So.
You didn't give her a meat cake?
No,
we've thought about doing that a few times.
In the future, I will remember to do that.
Like a steak cake. I don't know if y'all have seen that, but steak cakes are a thing, and they frosted in mashed potatoes.
Ooh, I was thinking meatloaf.
I've seen that.
Yeah. Anyway.
And I would do anything for love.
Anyway.
All right. Well, see you later.
Sorry about that sidetrack.
Fall asleep.
Don't be sorry. That was great.
So, out of curiosity, how many of you had spiked eggnog tonight? Because I just joined and all I see or hear is chaos.
I haven't. I'm just sleep deprived.
I am drinking this. This is water.
I also have water. And I feel sleep deprived, but I am not sleep deprived. I overslept this morning, and it was fantastic, but I'm on that overslept, still sleepy thing all day.
Yeah. Well, TK, do you want to get back on track somehow?
Sure.
Okay.
Actually, better than getting back on track, why don't you start over? Because I don't remember a thing that you said.
Basically, yes.
Okay, I didn't even really get started. So, in the past month, I have had to basically restructure the entire first part of this novel. So, to the fact that there was too much going on here. There were too many characters, so some people had to get cut and moved to other books. They're going to be introduced, but they're going to be introduced later on. So, and I broke up the novel into separate chapters in separate documents, because that's how my brain works. So, what you're gonna probably hear some stuff that you've heard before, but this is edited for clarity and for to make it better. Okay, let me get it.
Yes, Sarah?
I don't know anything at all about what you're going to be reading, except what you just said.
Okay. So this is the sequel to my original novel, The Book of the White Raven. This is going to be called The Book of Starlight. I have successfully edited chapters 1 through 4. This is part of chapter 5. And this is taking place in the human world. The human world in my books is basically like late 90s, early 2000s as far as technology goes. There is cell phones, but they are barely there. One character who does have confirmed to have a cell phone has a Nokia. What else would you have?
Right, you can't kill those things.
Exactly. And it's Boris, so you need something that's unkillable.
I'm just imagining Boris with a little Nokia.
Yes.
Boris is like her universe's version of Walter. So
right.
We actually have a crossover episode planned at some point.
Okay, I hate to dip just now, but I do have to dip. Darn it.
All right. Enjoy your dip.
I hope it's cheesy.
That sure was. All right. I will have to listen back into the actual podcast to catch your story, Chris.
All right.
All right. Good night, all.
Good night. Okay, so in the earlier part of this chapter, Seraphina's house has been staked out by a monster that no one knows what it is. So she calls for help down to the hidden city of Evermore where the fairy people live. This is where we pick up. Down in Evermore, an old-fashioned phone began to ring. From bed, Katrina Carson picked up the heavy melamine receiver. "Hello?" she mumbled. "Miss Katrina? It's Seraphina." "Sarah, it's..." She squinted at her clock. 3 in the morning. "We just had a wraith attack and they brought a friend. I don't know what it was." "Okay, just keep the lights on. I'll send Wolf and Boris right out. We'll be here." Katrina hung up the phone and shook her husband awake. "Scared, Wolf? Wolf, wake up." The ogre grunted. "What is it, Kitty?" "There's trouble in Tara. Seraphina's house came under wraith attack." Hardwolf pushed himself up. "Go raid Boris. I'll get dressed." Katrina put on her bathrobe and went across the little hall between their room and Boris's loft. Boris lay sound asleep on his mattress. A soft glow from the corner revealed the terrarium of his pet Sparky, a salamander. The magical creature, not the amphibian. "Boris? Honey, wake up." What's the matter?" grumbled Boris. "There's some trouble at Sarah's house. Get dressed. Dad will need your help." "Okay." Boris got up, turned on his light, and grunted. "I'm sorry, sweetie." "It's okay." Boris looked around. "Darn it all, where's my hoodie?" Sparky chirped and pointed his tail at Boris's desk chair. "Thanks, Sparks." Within 15 minutes, the ogre and his son, toting his salamander in a shirt pocket against the cold, arrived in the Tara neighborhood. I'll explain that after I'm done. They went silent and swift through the darkness, past the church. Once they came around the church, they stopped. "You smell that, Dad?" "Yes, I don't know this one." I smell the wraiths, but I don't know the other scent. The two looked at each other, each seeing the other clearly with their night eyes. This wasn't good. Boris was especially disconcerted. His dad knew everything. Something he didn't know had to be bad. Go to the O'Reilly house and check on them, said Erdwulf. Boris nodded and followed his father. Erdwulf knew where Seraphina's home was, of course, but it was easy to spot. It had every conceivable light on. Erdwulf examined the yard. The scent of the creature was very strong here. He found a circle of scorched grass where the thing had stood and choked on the noxious scent of the thing. Whatever it was a being of pure malice. Dad? Come on, son. Sarah paced uneasily, waiting for Erdwulf to arrive. Granny was already in the process of making tea. Who were we expecting, Sarah? Asked Rachel, Sarah's mother. The garrison commander of Evermore and his son, Boris. Sarah chewed her lip for a second. They're going to be a little shocking when you see them. Like your boyfriend? Asked Uriel snidely. Sarah resisted the urge to roll her eyes. No, they're not elves. Not elves? Then what are they? Well, came a loud knocking at the door. Patrick pulled his gun and made for the entryway. Dad, I don't think the gun's necessary, said Sarah. I'm not taking any chances with that thing. Sarah skittered after him, worried. She watched from the door to the dining room as Patrick opened the entryway door, revealing the massive form of Erdwulf, Boris no doubt behind him. Her father shouted, "Whoa!" and aimed his gun at the pair. Sir, calm down, cried Erdwulf, holding up his hands. Yeah, we're friendly. What's going on? Called Rachel. Stay back, girls, Patrick ordered. Get off my veranda. Dad, put the gun down. They're some of my fairy people. Sarah came running up from behind. What? There we go. Erdwulf and Boris from the underground city I told you about. Erdwulf is garrison commander and takes care of everyone down there, and Boris is his son. Patrick slowly lowered his gun. What are they? Erdwulf is an ogre, Dad, and his son is part human, said Sarah quietly. 50% human, 100% handsome, quipped Boris. Sarah reached out and took Erdwulf's hand. Dad, make some room to let them pass. They really don't mean any harm. Patrick continued to glare at them as Seraphina pulled Erdwulf into the entryway. He held his gun at the ready as she pulled Boris in after his father. She glanced over her shoulder at her family gathered in the door. Their faces a mixture of fear and wonder. It's okay, everyone. They're friendly. Sarah held Erdwulf's hand and guided him into the dining room. The ogre ducked slightly to make room for his horns and pulled his hood more over his face in hopes of disguising it. So she was telling the truth, said Uriel. I don't lie, Ree, snapped Sarah. I showed you proof before. Some jewelry and a picture of some handsome dude. Now I've got monsters in our dining room. Hey! Barked Boris aggressively. Boris, warned his father, holding him back. Remember what I've taught you. Do not escalate. The teen grumbled and stepped back. They are not monsters, Ree, said Sarah calmly. Erdwulf adjusted his posture so he looked less threatening and moved closer to a wall. One horn struck a photo on the wall and knocked it down. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Are you destroying stuff, I see, remarked Uriel. Have you got a problem, Uriel? Snapped Seraphina. Dad, maybe we should go, said Boris. No, you stay right there, ordered Sarah. Yes, my lady. My lady, look at you all airs and graces, Uriel barked. Uriel, that is quite enough, ordered Rachel. These gentlemen are our guests. So I think it's time you told us some more about what happened while you were gone, Sarah. Sarah sighed. I suppose. We'll step out for a moment. We need to make sure the creature is gone, said Erdwulf. We'll return presently. As soon as the door shut, Sarah turned to her family. Here's the short version. Fingal's family granted me a title as a reward for killing the witch that captured me, which means according to their laws, I hold the same rank as Fingal and his sister Megan. No doubt in preparation for you to marry him, too, snarked Uriel. Sarah turned red. No, it was a reward for valor. Sure. Uriel, this attitude is unacceptable, said Patrick. Since when does she want someone that handsome? She's never been interested in boys before. All this is because you were jealous of Fingal? Demanded Sarah. I went through hell. You've seen her scars, right? Put in Celeste, who was the oldest sister. How do we know this Fingal guy didn't do that to her? Snapped Uriel. Fingal would never hurt me, shouted Seraphina, barely noticing when Airwolf and Boris came back in. She ripped off her robe and held up her arms. Take a good look. These scars will never fade because Sycorax torn my arms with her nails simply for existing. She beat me. She starved me. She ripped out my hair. I worked as a slave in her house with the worst tasks. She's a frickin' living battery for the magic in my blood. Uriel wilted in the face of Sarah's onslaught. But you didn't believe me. Nobody but Granny and Fred really believed me. We believed you, honey, said Rachel. We couldn't really believe in the magical things until your friends came. Sarah looked at her mother. So you thought I was crazy. Not crazy, only needing help. But sometimes trauma does funny things. It was easier to believe that there was a rational explanation. You made up the magical things to cope with what you went through. Tears started down Sarah's cheeks. It still hurts that you wouldn't believe me. Boy, did we walk into something, observed Boris. I'm sure it does hurt, said Rachel. But we're sorry. We're all sorry. Said pointedly at Uriel, who nodded. Granny Molly wiped Sarah's eyes with a handy tissue. I think we all need a cuppa. Would you gentlemen like some tea? She called to Erdwulf and Boris. Tea would be very nice. Thank you, Mattern. Thank you, Mattern? No. Thank you, madam, said Erdwulf. Did you find anything, Mr. Erdwulf? Asked Seraphina. No, whatever you saw was long gone by the time we got here. I doubt you'll have any trouble with it tonight. Some of my people will reconnoiter tomorrow night and see if anything turns up. Thank you. Have a seat, gentlemen, invited Molly. Erdwulf eyed the dining room chairs. I daren't, madam. I think it would be too heavy. Boris sat down carefully in a chair while his father knelt on the floor. Sarah sat down across from Boris at the table. Uriel sat down beside Sarah, who gave her the side-eye, still not quite trusting her not to flake out. Her sister was trying to get a look under Boris's hood. She gave her a poke in the ribs to get her to stop. If Boris noticed, he didn't let on. Molly handed Airwolf his tea first, the teacup and saucer looking ridiculously small and dainty in his grasp. He carefully took a drink, clearly avoiding his tusks. Boris sipped delicately as well for fear of damaging the china. Thank you for the tea, ma'am, said Boris. You're welcome, dear boy. Thank you for coming to see us so quickly. We're sorry you had to see all that drama, said Sarah. Boris waved his hand. You don't think we have family drama? Oh, Dad, you might want to call Mom. She'll worry. Yes, may I use your telephone? Uriel's eyes went big. You have a mother? Ree! Scolded Sarah. Snorted. Of course I have a mother. What, do you think ogres pop out of holes in the ground? You have a mother. Boris reached into his pocket and pulled out a small lizard-like creature. There we go. A little chilly out there, isn't it, bud? He set it down on the table. Mert looked around with bright, dark eyes. I didn't know you had a salamander. He's so cute. Yeah, I've had him since my 8th birthday. Professor Hazelton gave him to me. That's an awfully normal name, said Rachel. Professor Hazelton is a human. In fact, he lives here in Rock City most of the time, Sarah explained before turning back to Boris. I'm sure your parents were thrilled, she teased. Actually, they were. I've been taking care of the Prof's salamanders for a year, and was so good with them, Prof gave me a hatchling. I wish I'd come up with a better name than Sparky. You were 8. Good point. Erdwulf hung up the phone and handed his teacup back to Granny Molly. Boris and I had better be going. You can shut off the lights if you like. They shouldn't be back. Thanks for coming, said Molly. You've been very reassuring. And I will stop there.
Sounds good. I like how all my favorite stuff is still there. Especially
there was no way I was cutting that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just saying, especially the one line, of course. You know which one.
There was no way I was getting rid of that one.
Right? Aaron, do you have anything for TK?
Anything for her? Well, I'm not nearly as familiar with this story as Joshua, this being the first time I heard it. And I would say I don't exactly know what's going on, first off. Um, I, of course, noticed all the family drama, which I guess that is the kind of thing that interests me because I guess I am writing a lot of it myself. Um, I happen to be. So, yeah, I'd say that part interests me. I mean, I was confused by the salamander not being a salamander. Um,
I do need to explain that better.
yeah, yeah. What's going on with that?
Yeah, a salamander is both the amphibian that we know as salamander is named after a mythological elemental creature that is the elemental spirit of fire.
Mm-hmm.
I have them as a lizard-like creature that can heat up to very high temperatures. Think of it like a very small version of Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah, all right. Um, so it's a wingless dragon?
Yes, it's like a tiny wingless dragon.
Oh, I would generally call that a drake. Okay, I understand now.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that audio you're hearing is from a game.
It's all
I
good.
don't
It
do
barely
credit
comes through because
audio.
of Discord, so that's all good.
Got it.
Alrighty. Wilson's, are you dipping or are you sticking around for Aaron's reading and anything else?
Yeah,
we're gonna
we got a dip.
I figured as much. So Aaron, it'll be me and you. You have all my ears. And we'll see you all, Wilsons. Have a good one. Have a happy New Year.
You
all right.
too.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Alrighty.
All right. I'm only gonna share one thing though. I am struggling to pick between three of them, which are all very related.
I know how that goes.
What?
I said I know how that goes.
Yeah. So I read a story. Last time I read a story on here, it was unfinished. I had just started it during the cast, and then did what I have. I finished that story.
Okay.
And I think I shared it with the Brood in chat, so I think you may have read it already. 15 Years of High Summer.
I think so. That might have been a while ago, but yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Well, the main reason it's related to what I'm currently writing is because I'm considering it as a prologue for my book.
Okay.
But I have also just finished the first chapter of that book today and started the second chapter.
Very nice.
And I'm debating which of those early sections I'm going to pick out.
Well, you haven't read the other one that you think I've read, and I think I've read on the Broodcast. So why don't you just go with that one?
Okay.
That way, it's an introduction to the people who are listening later, whom this is recorded for. So yeah.
Okay, but it's important to know that if it is the prologue of my book, the title line would be 2,000 years ago. Okay. So it's not that directly related.
Gotcha.
And it's a slice of life story, so it's not like it's talking about some big event that's referred to.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a story that I'm considering as a prologue because its plot has, it feels like the same elements. It seems like a good thematic promise.
Yeah.
Even though it's, entirely different. Era-wise and character-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways. And I also haven't read this in a long time. But, okay. This will be good to remember what I have at least. So, 2,000 years ago, the woods were green this year. 15 years of high summer gave the children of the forest a sense of security. The past calamities were out of mind for those who lived through it, but for those who were born after, they have only heard stories of what is to come. Dina and Ephraim played in the forest. Their older sister, Ava, watched them. She never understood why they liked the underbrush. There were fist-sized spiders, leg-length centipedes, and head-sized dragonflies in there. Nothing you would want to live with. Most bugs weren't dangerous. If they were, men couldn't live here. They were not very scared of humans, and why would they be? They were the things to be feared. Ava remembered the stories she was told by her grandfathers of snakes without armor, ants nigh invisible, and many other myths of another world. But somehow her siblings were able to manage to stay sane in a world of these disgusting things. She watched carefully. The fist-sized bugs were not too common. You might not see them every day, but they were common enough to be concerned. When the children saw a spider, they would ask her to kill it. They were too scary for children. But they at least were all alone. You never touched the ants. You never fought or killed them. Even though they were the size of a finger, together they could destroy a village. Though men were crowned by God, it was the ants who ruled the forest. The many-legged centipedes were safe. In fact, they were almost a kind of cattle. Disgusting as they were, they had meat inside those shells, safe to eat, but which obviously needed to be cooked. She did not need to watch for those. But the most dangerous thing of all were the ticks. Not because they were hard to kill, but because of all the bugs of the forest, they alone hunted men. Men and fae. But those many-legged ticks, I spread across a third of a man's chest. They were impossible to ignore. They would find the warmest source of blood they could, and the warmest source of blood was the heart. If they found you while you were sleeping, the encounter was fatal. Ava wondered where they came from, the ticks who took men's lives. Her parents told her that they were not in the forest in their childhood, but they had been a constant danger all her life. Carefully, she must watch. She must kill whatever tick is found. Even if the tick does not taste the heart, even if it attaches itself to the leg, such an attack could kill. 5. In 2 hours, she killed 5. She couldn't imagine why there were so many. They did not attack other insects. Their bodies were designed to pierce the flesh. She looked in the sky. The beasts of flesh were on another world. She shook her head. It seemed to her that only the city of Shothora far away could support such a large population of these heart-eating beasts. These worried her more and more as she grew up. Ticks were new. This is something she was told. Yet the only being who might have made them should be dead. She shook her head and became attentive again to watching her siblings, Dina and Ephraim. A spider, 2 more ticks she killed. But then she saw another thing which worried her more than those all-consuming stones. A falling leaf. "I swore it fell naturally. We did not shake the tree," Ava cried. "A single leaf is not something to worry about. Maybe it was sick, and if it is a sign, we have plenty of time," the village elder insisted. "It needs to be a common occurrence before we go into the mountains." "Where does the fire start? Where does it start?" she cried. "You're a very anxious child. Don't worry. It's only reasonable that you are, since you became conscious during a calamity. I have dealt with 3 of these things. There is no reason to worry." "I hear there's a desert in the east that Athenoam saw, and dry wood on the fringes. What if it starts there?" she cried. "If it started before half the leaves fell, I would have seen it before," the elder said. "Do not worry about a single leaf. These things will become more common before it is time to leave." And it did. Once they confirmed that the leaves had begun to fall, the people of the forest sent word to the dwarves that they would need to prepare a place for them in their halls. They hoped to prepare all things in half a year, move in the second half, and then forage from the march until the time the fire came. They heard a tribe by the Isle had tried to swim in the middle of the lake during the fire, but they were choked out and found dead years later. Only the high peaks of the dwarves could be a safe shelter in the coming crisis. Ava stood upon a cold balcony overlooking the firestorm below. 2 fires approached, one from the east, the other from the south, churning up the forest, causing it to heave to become dust and ashes. The march she overlooked was a small grass plain at the foot of the mountains, so it never caught fire. But if they had chose to dwell there, they would have died from the thick smoke that covered it. The living fire was a thing of beauty, a pillar of smoke in the day, a shifting sea of stars in the night. The fierce fire was a thing of comfort, killing those armored animals which caused her so much fear. Yet they survived. The shelled things always survived. She had asked her parents how the insects survived the fires long ago, and they told her they did not know. They must protect themselves somehow, but who knew how they did this? If only they too were unaware of this secret of survival so that the woods could be safe. If only they too were aware of this secret of survival so that the woods could be safe for all people. Where were their high peaks? Where were their islands to survive? The smoke billowed, ever rising up into the sky, the high sky, and then it fell down to their peaks. As the smoke began to roll down the sides of the mountains, the dwarves closed their windows to the sky above. For a week they would look through glass, the air becoming ever stiffer, until the week was past, and they opened themselves to fresh, cold air. The smoke hung in the sky above. One second. I switched to first person somewhere in this writing.
It's okay. Make your note, and we'll just deal with the switch. But make your note and keep reading.
The smoke hung in the sky above, blocking our view of the sun. A thick, gray-black cloud, lording darkness over the landscape. A thicker black cloud remained at the foot of the mountains. It began to flow, a cloud of dust flowing ever southward, but always dangerous, until the snow fell. White and gray, the snow fell, covering up the ashes of the fire. Soon the lower clouds dispersed. The smoke retreated into the ground and into the sea. A sea of white sprinkled with charred spires was revealed. It was then that they declared it was time to move into our houses. The houses of the march were wood houses, separated from the fierce fire by moats and grass. The houses would sometimes burn down, but more often than not they survived the flames. These houses were well constructed, heavily insulated, having been warmed by the fierce heat of fall. They felt at first like a sauna in the midst of winter, until they quickly cooled. Each house had a fireplace, warm blankets and stalls to keep their animals, horses, and even gala cows. They took the wood they had stored in the dwarven halls for the winter and brought them into these houses. This wood would keep them warm, and what remained after spring would be used for more useful things. Eva moved into her house, her temporary shelter for the cold winter months, where her family and many others lived in tight quarters, warming themselves by the heat of the fire and by the heat of their neighbor. Despite the quarters, none of them desired to return to halls of stone, to cold stone where ice formed from ancient stains of water. The wood houses were better for times like these. Some had to sleep on the floor at these times. This was forbidden in the forest, where the ticks may eat your hearts, but the houses were thoroughly cleared of all insects every year. But this year, something was different. One morning, they woke up to weeping in the men's quarters. Thesa, an heir of Athenoum, was dead, tick pounding on the chest. Eva rushed in quickly. 1,000 curses, 1,000 deaths you die, she shouted. You kill us in the places where you must go to survive. In anger, she ripped the tick off the man's chest and stabbed it fiercely with her sharpened stick. You have no right to live where men do, she cried, as blood pooled at her knees. A man's blood. You have no right to use our shelters to survive, you unjust demons. The tick was dazed. It had no defense. 1,000 deaths you die. 1,000 curses, whoever made you. In Sheol's abyss rot. May the Holy One torment you. In a moment of clarity, it lashed out with a single claw and sliced her arm. Ah, you fierce one! She looked at it. The bloated stomach was gone, yet it remained alive. She was baffled. It remained conscious. "You must have a head, then," she replied. So she smashed the place that looked to have eyes. The being stilled, and Ava wept. For a short time the house was in suspense, wondering at her outburst. But when she broke, the whole house cried out. Nothing could be heard except the sound of weeping. The solemn procession was held, a funeral for the great heir, his noble heritage buried in the snow. The dirt was hardened by the cold. Even the iron shovels of the dwarves would not have been able to break it. Then the second death came in, and the third, and the people wept as they realized that the ticks had found their way into the houses. Ephraim woke up to a tick biting into his skull. His scream shook the house. The people tried to save him, bringing him out into the cold, trying to get the tick to pull away due to the cold. Trusting they could save him while he was still weeping, they lit a torch. They tried to scare it away with fire, but they only burned the hairs of his head. For 3 days he wept, and then he died. He did not die of the tick, though all thought he would. No, in his pain he rushed out into the cold. Nobody had the heart to stop him. And there he was buried in the ice of his tears. Shaken, the people of the forest began to withdraw from the houses, realizing that none were completely safe. Those who would have slept on the floor packed themselves into the cold, dark mountain apartments, warmed only by the smithies of the dwarves. Ava was cold. She sat on the porches. So many years watching her brother in the forest, and now in the house he dies. She had no more heart left to curse. Snow fell. She wished to also die. Snow fell. To her back roared the fires. Her brother was behind her, and before her was death's cold grip on life. The boy Everin sat beside her in silence, a boy she met years ago. He was a beautiful lad, a great comforter, a lover at heart, someone she was certain she would marry. He was not the warmth to comfort her. He sat in silence. The clouds fell as the snow brought down the high ashes. In the middle of the night she saw the snow turn into hail. In the morning the hail melted into rain. The weeping of the earth. The clouds parted. The white clouds and the sun, like the sun beat down at noon. Great rivers formed in the snow melt. A great flood washed over the plains. The people dwelled in the attics at this time, though the people would have dwelled in the attics at this time, though their houses were not likely to be pulled away, with how close they were to the edge of the waves. The waters passed away, and the people walked into the mud of spring. In a day the grass returned, in a week the flowers were blooming, and a month the leaves returned. Ava walked to the edge of the forest. She wondered how the stalks of trees survived the endless flames, ready to put out leaves when the fire, cold, and water receded. How could they survive such oppressive heat, more oppressive than the heat of Ghana sitting on his throne amidst the sky? Shouldn't they have lost so much, she thought? What if the trees have families, she said within her mind? What would they think of their brothers and sisters dying? How would they respond? She picked petals off a flower. They chose to live. I'm sitting on a charred stump, that tree's neighbor, yet he stands tall, proud, and green. Why is he so insensitive? Why does he hate the dead? But what would the dead want? Do not even they despise death? Why would they want to live in submission to it? They are its slaves, but we are their sisters. Why should we submit to death's rule? Are we not all that remains of our brothers? She pulled away the last petal of flower. She bowed in honor to the tree and kissed the stump she sat upon. Thank you for teaching me wisdom, she said in a whisper. She went over to the house where Everin lived. She was told that he was watching over the cattle. He was a man of the fields. He liked to live with the horses. He was trying to ride one like he heard they did near Shothora. But so far, neither he nor anybody else in Agaroth had managed it. She met him when her father had brought her to trade southern fruit for the meat of Gala cows in the march. She was 13 at the time, so was he, and they quickly fell in love. She constantly asked to travel there to meet up with him. Finally, she let herself be glad that the calamities had allowed her to spend a year with him without fear of separation. Ava called out to Everin. He asked how she was doing. She said it was fine. He asked about her brother. She said the trees had helped her through. He looked at her puzzled, but simply hugged her. You were always there when I needed you, she said. Thank you. They talked about many things. Everin told her about how the people of Cadell were building stone walls so that they could build houses within those walls to be safe from the fires. Sure, they would still need to travel to the mountains when the fires came. After all, Cadell was by the lake, and no walls could be built high enough to shield the houses from the lower cloud of smog. But instead of dwelling in the march for the winters, they would be able to move back into their homes. However, they doubted how well the city would manage during the time of the floods, and if it might be buried during the snow. Traders from Shothora were also thinking about building a stone-walled shelter city so that they didn't have to depend on their version of the marches in winter. There were also talks about how it would be easier to travel between the cities in midwinter due to the ice on the lake, but all of it never came about this year. Maybe, just maybe, it would come true before next fall. Ava informed Everin that there might be a new shelter in the south. The priest of Middlemont insisted that the lonely mountain of Agaroth was tall enough to hold a shelter, and repeatedly attempted to contract labor from the forest to build it. But so far, basically nobody had volunteered their assistance. She asked if there was some place free of the fires. As far as Everin heard, they were a worldwide phenomenon, except in some place called the Sea of Storms. But other worlds were not wearied by them. Maybe one day it would not even weary her own. They passed the days of spring in the fields with horses. Everin constantly tried to prove to her that he was making progress with the horses. She laughed when he fell and tried to ride them herself, but they further refused to hold her as a rider. But often Everin's father pulled him away from his beloved four-legged stallions and told him to tend to the more profitable herds of the Gala cows. These beasts were technically a form of drake in the broadest sense, a creature whose six-limbed body is a variation of the form of a dragon, 4 legs and 2 arms at the front. The ugly beast used one arm to constantly groom itself, scratching itself in every place imaginable, and with the other it ripped up grass to feed itself. The beast was disgusting, hairless due to its constant grooming, but it lacked any real semblance of a neck, and certainly arms were not what she wanted to see on a 6-limbed wingless beast. However, they were at least tasty. In fact, they were designed to be cattle, so their meat was of the most exquisite variety. Horse meat was tasteless by comparison. They passed the days of spring and bloom together, but soon the heat of Ghana grew oppressive, and the shade of the forest was thick, and the people began to venture back into the woods. The winter houses grew stuffy, and those who remained moved into their summer tents. The forest and its shade called out to Eva, but Everin wished to remain in the plains. What do you intend to do? He asked her. 15 more years out there, and maybe some more when we're not able to speak to each other freely, only know each other on occasion. But we are already of marriageable age, and next time we are brought together like this, how old will we be? My people are in the forest, Ava said. You asked me to make a decision already? Why can't you go with me? The march is dry. The sun Ghana oppresses the plains. Do you really wish to stay here? We can build a pavilion in the plains and let the wind flow freely, he replied. Only let us build it together. She thought for a moment. She loved him, but could she change her way of life? She thought of her sister. who will protect her as she played in the forest. But no, she had other family there, didn't she? Ava only watched her because she was available. Someone else would take her role anyways. Besides, as she thought, she realized she hated the forest. She may have feared the summer heat, but so far she had barely felt the high summer sun as those in the plain had known it. However, she could not return to the choking forest shade. She bowed her head to him. I'll stay. She made this known to her parents and her family, and they parted with kisses and tears. Then Ava turned to her husband and walked with him for 15 more years of high summer.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, your one little change is the only thing that probably needs to be made. I know that's easier said than done, as far as just getting through and changing all the perspective stuff. But you could also, if you really like the way it's written, you could do a transition pretty easily from narrator to first person. Just as long as you're spelling it out for people. I think the thing that shines forth the best in what you're doing in that one is the visceral nature of the creatures. You do an excellent job describing all the specifics in such a way that it isn't esoteric in any way. It's very like you can feel, see, smell, touch these creatures with your imagination very easily. So you did an excellent job with that. I know you're very, very high fantasy kind of a thing. As far as the concepts and things go. One thing to be especially careful of is making dialogue still human, even if it's in a different era, a different place. They have a different way of speaking. It should still feel very human. And I'm not saying that it didn't. I'm saying that's something that you could improve if you wanted to. Right? Now, you may not want to for a prologue.
I know,
but
some dialogue seemed a bit weird.
Right. This is something George Lucas struggles with a lot of his dialogue. And I find a lot of people who are very high concept have a problem with. You don't have to go all the way to a Joss Whedon to have good dialogue. You know, you can have high fancy dialogue. Tolkien was good at this. Obviously, whenever he had dialogue, he tried to make it feel very human unless it was meant to feel, really out there, right? Which he did at times, but anyway, that's kind of what I have for that one, but I did enjoy it. Thank you. Are you gonna stick around for mine and then we'll wrap this thing up?
Sure.
Awesome. So I'm not gonna read two like I thought. I'm just gonna read the one. I don't know if you heard earlier, but I have finished posting on my website. I'll reiterate for people. Season 1 of Guardians of Atlanta, my main superhero series right now. And it's 112 poems. Well crafted, full arc. So you can go read that now if you want. JoshuaDavidLingett.com/GOA1 is the first chapter for anyone who wants to go there. There's easy navigation as well. But this is a sort of one-shot chapter that is toward the end. Since I've been posting most of the end chapters lately, I figured I'd share something from there that's not giving away a whole lot of spoilers, but it's sort of a self-contained one-shot. I also get to do some fun, interesting metered stuff in this poem. It is about a villain, and it kind of is self-explanatory, so I'm just going to go ahead and get to it. This is the Ballad of Harbingela. Snow fell from the silent bove that in that tiny village in the east, where homes full of Christian love brought joy from greatest to least, and warmth and fellowship at every feast, save the darkness that loomed within. the 12-year-old daughter of the priest. No one would survive her sin. Though no reason was given for her switch, she radiated darkness throughout. She practiced the art of a witch, secretly, with none knowing about. How gleeful and without a doubt she planned and executed her scheme. Though she seemed pious and devout, fiery hell ran through her bloodstream. The town burned, black on snow, gave symmetry to the sound of desolation in her soul, but she lusted for more towns, to flicker, ember, and burn down. So off she walked to see what villages what villages she made the rounds would raise a spark as easily. A few more towns fell victim to the same fate as the last. Fire consuming all then flew across nearby towns and fast. But though the desolation vast, many people began to catch on, and questions did they then ask, how to stop her before the dawn. She changed her tactics as she grew, to influencing others to wreak the havoc that was in her heart. She tricked others to seek. She'd come and go within a week, and the town would slowly fight, until their souls had all gone bleak, and she'd drive away in the night. This went on for her whole life, and then went on for more. She stored a replica of her soul in the anklet of a whore, and every time the anklet wore itself against some skin, it possessed that person with the lore her soul had held within. What was then left of this she, 3 centuries to the day, descended upon standing peach tree with malicious intent to sway the people to her evil way, but she finally was quelled, as thousands showed up that day to end Harbingula's spells. So there we go.
Yeah, that is that villain definitely I mean, it definitely feels villainous.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's really good.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
She's known as the Witch Queen in this story. It's superheroes, kind of a thing. She's an ancient evil. And basically the whole story was she was this young kid in Russia-ish, Siberia kind of a thing, and she just her whole life works her way westward. And her story ends in Standing Peachtree. That's the old name, Cherokee name for the Atlanta area. So she made all the way, that far. And all people kept hunting her and following her after she destroyed things. Kept going. And they finally caught up in the Atlanta area before she could cross the continental United States and everything. So... But yeah, that's what all that's about.
Okay. I mean, her powers are like pretty crazy as well.
She's not the Witch Queen for no reason.
Yeah. Certainly.
So yeah, if anyone wants to read more about that, she is a driving force in the main plot of the whole first arc. She's not a major character necessarily, but she's like sort of a Sauronish sort of situation, and definitely has a big impact on the full story. So, any which way, we're going to go ahead and wrap it there for everyone listening. Not currently, but in the future. You can find out more at joshuadavidling.com. Remember, be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches next year on Poets at War.
This is the Broodcast, Inkling-style Discord chat, last Friday of every month. To join, go to joshuadavidling.com/Discord.